Okay, today we're going to start Yud Gimel Amid Beis right on the top. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In the schus of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. Reb Naftali had a question. I think the question was when Adam are signing on a document of a promissory note, are they attesting to the actual loan being given, or are they just attesting to the indebtedness of the loiva to the malva? In other words, do they have to see the transaction, or they just have to say, well, I know that he agreed to this? So yeah, I'm not sure 100%. Let me get a safer. Nice. Just keep this with me. Let's see. I'm a Rebbe Lazar. We're starting right on the top line, easy. Did I say we're learning in the memory of Abigail the Basbar Benjamin and whoever needs to refer Shlema. Here we're discussing someone that finds documents, and the document saying that someone owes Shimon owes Reuven money. So the question is, should the documents be returned to Reuven or to Shimon? Should they be returned? If they're returned to Reuven, then he can use them to collect, and that could be a problem. So we have two possibilities. We have a machlekes in the Mishnah. We have a machlekes Rameh and the Chachamim if the documents should be returned. Everyone agrees that if there's a achrayas in the documents, in other words, if the documents say that there's a lien on Shimon's property, if Reuven wants to collect, not only can he go to Shimon's property that he has now, but even to previous properties that he used to own, and he sold them, he can take them away. Everyone agrees that the documents should not be returned. And the machlekes is, what about by documents that don't have a lien on it? Reb Meir says you could return them. You could return them because you can only collect from Shimon himself, and this is not going to affect anyone else. Nacham say benkach or benkach, doesn't matter. You can't return. That's the machlekes in the Mishnah. Machlekes Tanaim. Now we have a machlekes Amiroim. What is the case where we have this machlekes Tanaim? So machlekes on what's the machlekes? So we started off saying in the Gemara that we learned yesterday that Shimon agrees that he owes the money. The question is, should it be returned? Maybe there's some sort of he borrowed the money later. He took the debt earlier. I mean, there's possibilities that when you're going to take the property away from the purchaser, that it's not really accurate. It's not because the money was borrowed later. Okay. Then we had another opinion that says that the machlekes is Shmuel's opinion. Was that Shmuel that we're talking about? K'she'ein chayev maida. When Shimon says, "I never borrowed the money," not I never borrowed the money. I paid the money back. You have to say, I paid. Is he saying I never borrowed the money? Yeah, he's saying I never borrowed the money. I'll prove it. He's saying I never borrowed the money. The whole thing is a forgery. And so why do we give the document back? Why do we give the document to Reuven? He says, well, he maybe wants to use it as a bottle stopper. No, I just jumped cases. Why do we give a document that doesn't have a achrayas in it back? If it doesn't have the lien in it, why do we give that back? The answer is because that's an invalid document. So it's pointless. It's pointless. There's no. So why do we give it back to Reuven? So you can use it as a bottle stopper. The Gemara said, why don't we give it back to Shimon? He said, well, he just said that he never borrowed the money, so the whole thing is a forgery. So we're not giving it to him. Okay. We're holding now Amar Rebbe Lazar. Now this was in yesterday's Gemara was all taking place in Bavel. This is in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Lazar says machlekes b'shein chayav ma'ida. Remember, there's a machlekes Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim if you return a document that doesn't have a chrayas in it, a document without a lien. Can you return it? When is that machlekes? So Rabbi Lazar says that's talking about when Shimon, who's borrowing the money, says that I never borrowed the money. The whole document is a forgery. The Rabbi Meir holds. Rabbi Meir says that you give it back, the document, if it doesn't have a chrayas in it. You give it back. The document that doesn't have a chrayas in it, it's useless. So why not give it back? It's useless. No one can collect from it anyway. Why can't you collect from this document? I mean, witnesses signed on it. He holds that it's not a valid document. If it doesn't say achrayas in it, it's not valid. It's considered like just a verbal agreement. And it's like Reuven's coming over to Shimon telling him, you owe me money. And so Shimon can say, well, no, I don't. I say, yeah, but here's a document. So that document's not valid. So basically, you lose a document if it doesn't have achrayas in it.
Is that la?
No. This is Reb Meir's view. The Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold. Now, okay, there's a question here. When you don't have achrayas in it, there's two ways of reading this. Some read it. You can't read it from. You can't collect from nechas mishabadim, which means from sold property. But you can collect from his own property that hasn't been sold. Shimon has property. You can take from that. Some drop that, and I think the reason is because the Chachamim hold that if it doesn't have achrayas, it doesn't say that there's a lien on the property. We say that that's Torah Sefer. We say that that's just a mistake of the scribe, and there really is a lien. And if there really is a lien, then you can collect from anything. So that is the machlekes Reb Meir and the Chachamim is talking about when Shimon contests that there was ever a loan, and that's why we're not giving it back to Reuven. But let's say Shimon agrees that this is all good. There was a loan here. Then Divrei Hakol Yachzer, everyone would agree that you return it. Right. Shimon agrees. Reuven, of course, agrees. And now we do have one concern. We're making it look like it's so simple. If Shimon agrees that he borrowed the money, and Reuven says that you borrowed money, so what's the problem? Just give it back. No, we do have a concern, and the concern is this concern. We're not going to say that we do have a concern, but this concern we're not going to. The concern is that maybe Shimon already paid back, but he has sold the property, and he wants to get that property back. So he tells Reuven, come and collect again, and I'm not going to pay you. You'll take the money from the property that I sold, and we'll get rid of that purchaser that purchased the property from me by you taking it away. So what we're saying over here is that we're not choishish for that. That's called kanunya. Kanunya is, it sounds like something nefarious. Some trick, some. They'd be able to collect from the lien property, yeah, because there's a document here. According to the Chacham, you can collect. Look, if
the last one to collect,
last one to collect. What do you mean the last one? Are there other debts here?
Yeah, it's a lien property. I think that it's that they owe money on.
We're talking about Reuven is collecting from Shimon, right? And Shimon had property that he sold. So Reuven will go to those properties and take them to those purchasers and take them away. And then they'll have to go back to Shimon and say, give me the money. And Shimon says, wait in line.
And Shimon is receiving money from these purchasers?
He had already received it.
This is double dipping. Why is it called lien property? A lien is that the property has a debt.
Yeah.
They're faking it.
No, there's a lien. There's a lien property because the title isn't clean. because he had borrowed money, and these properties had a lien on them, and now he sold these properties without it's not a clean title. So now Reuven goes and takes those properties. Yeah. Okay. So far, this is the opinion of Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is a student of Rabbi Yochanan, a friend of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says no. He says machlekes kishachayev made. He says no. It's the opposite. Even if Shimon agrees, that's when we have the machlekes. In other words, according to Rabbi Lazar, if Shimon agrees that he owes the money, then there's no machlekes. You give it back. Everyone agrees that you give it back to Reuven. Now we're saying, according to Rabbi Yochanan, even if Shimon agrees that he owes the money, still we're saying that you don't give it back. He holds savar shtar shem by chayes nechasim mishabdi legavi avim nechayim megvagavi. I'm sorry, I skipped. Rabbi Meir savar. Rabbi Meir holds that if there's no achrayas in it, if there's no if it doesn't say in it that there's a lien on the property, then you don't collect from lien property, but you can collect from regular property. And since Shimon agrees that he owes the money, so we have no problem giving the document to Reuven, and Reuven will now go and collect from Shimon. He agreed to it, and you can collect directly from Shimon. There's no concern there. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold Mishabdi Nami Gavi, that even though maybe I made a mistake before in explaining the Rabbanan. I think I made a mistake before. This is in Rabbi Yochanan, when there's a document that doesn't have achrayas in it, then they say that it's a Torah Sefer, and you can collect even from lien property. Yeah. What was before the Rabbanan Sabri? Well, it depends how you want to read it. Okay, so that's going to make a difference. Okay. However, if we look at this differently, if the case is where Shimon doesn't agree that he owes the money, so then everyone will say that you can't give it back. Now, what's the reason why you can't give it back if Shimon doesn't agree? It's obvious. We have a concern that maybe Shimon already paid it. I have by Reb Meir Savar and Rabbanan Safri. Savrei, probably. Yeah. It's the singular or plural. By the Rabbanan, it says Savrei. Safri.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We have a clear machlekes here. There's a machlekes. What's the machlekes? Rabbi Lazar says that the machlekes is when Shimon doesn't agree that he owes the money, and nevertheless, Reb Meir would say that you can give it back in one instance if it doesn't have achrayas in the document. What's the reason for that? Because it's a worthless document.
So why even just give it back? Just tear it up.
Right. It's basically the same thing. Well, maybe he wants it, whatever. But if Shimon would agree that he owes the money, then we would have no problem giving the document back to Reuven. Right? That's Rabbi Lazar's view. We'll just give it back to Reuven and he can collect. Everyone would agree to that. And then Rabbi Yochanan's view is that even when Shimon does agree, we have all these other concerns and we're not giving it back. But Rabbi Yochanan has these extra concerns of even if Shimon agrees, we're not giving it back because maybe it was paid up and really he's doing this conniving scheme to get the property away from the purchaser.
The documents say that it was or wasn't paid off.
Does
the document say?
No, the document only says that there was a debt. It doesn't say if it was paid. Yeah, that's the problem.
What about a receipt or something?
Yes, there's no receipts over here. One of the things that's going through our minds is that if the document was paid, if the debt was paid, then the document should have been in the hands of Shimon, who was the borrower, and he should have torn it up. So in the back of our minds, we're thinking that look, the document wasn't torn up, probably it wasn't paid. At the same time, if it wasn't paid, we have another problem. We're thinking that if it really wasn't paid, then he never would have dropped it. The fact that he lost it means that he wasn't really taking care of it, and it's not so significant. The fact that he dropped it gives us like a reyesa in it, there's something wrong with this document. Why didn't he take care of it?
But to Yonatan's point, there's nothing that stops either of them from writing a receipt on the document itself. There's no halakha that says you can't write on the document after it's been put together.
Yeah, but the way the document works is that you put signatures right next to the bottom line. And then on the bottom of the document, you're going to write paid or something. You say, how do you know that that's, you're going to need signatures to that, onto that?
But what do you do if somebody comes along and says, okay, I know I borrowed $100 from you and it's due today, but you know, I only have 50. So I'm going to pay you 50. I'll pay you 50 next month. I think the typical thing is to write on the document, 50 paid.
Right. Now, the explanation for that is because there's only one person that's holding the document,
Right.
and that's the creditor.
Right.
So he's the one that's going to, if he wrote it and he's holding the document, he's going to use it next time. It's going to say clearly on it. Yeah. But if
and then he loses it before the final payment, and then someone finds it.
Right.
We're back in the same.
Right.
Or you just say like feather pens were expensive.
Is that?
Feather pens were expensive.
Very expensive. Don't get them apartments.
I don't think so.
You
I
only
don't
get
think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like on a kasuva, sometimes people add additional signatures
Uh-huh.
to the witnesses because some big shot is at the wedding who they don't
Right.
want to see insulted.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I've never been to a wedding with that.
I only learned about it. It was in Israel. I think it was somebody who was a big shot in the government came to the wedding
Uh-huh.
and expected to have a role.
Right.
He wasn't kosher aide.
Right.
So what are they going to do? They had the true aide who signed and then he signed elsewhere on the document.
Uh-huh. That's great.
Now, Charlie, thank you for using the word big shot. It's a great word.
The creditor could collect only if the guy agrees. Or if you find the witnesses that had signed on the document that remembered, and they would come and attest to that fact. Yeah, but then it's difficult. Okay, Tani Kavasei de Rabbi Yechanan. I'm going to bring a proof to Rabbi Yechanan where we have much more concerns in the way Rabbi Lazar was saying it. If to the Rabbi Lazar bechada, and we're going to have a concern. One question according to this price in Rabbi Lazar, but if to the Shmuel betarti, and we're going to have two questions according to Shmuel. Shmuel we learned yesterday. Shmuel was saying that we're never concerned about Kenonia, right? People are honest. Yeah. And the reason why we have machlokes is very similar to Rabbi Lazar. Okay. The Gemara will spell it out. The Brisa goes like this. If someone finds documents that are promissory notes, and in those documents it says that there's a lien on the property. Even though both agree that the lender, of course, agrees, and the borrower also agrees. It says, you can't return it. Why can't you return it? Obviously, we're concerned that there's some conniving, something over here that the scoundrel that he's trying to get rid of the purchaser. Kenunya. If there's no lien in these documents, there's no lien on properties. Then if Shimon agrees, then you can return it to Reuven and he'll use it to collect. If Shimon doesn't agree, then the only concern that we would have now is that maybe it was paid up and we don't return it to Reuven. We don't return it to Shimon either. We don't return it to Shimon because we're not really sure that it was paid up. He's claiming it's paid up, so we hold on to it. That's Reb Meir's view. Shayir Reb Meir Eimer, because Reb Meir would say, "Shtarei chayiv," that in promissory note, sheish b'machrayes nechasim that have an edalin in it, gavim nechasim mishabadim. You can collect from the sold properties. Shein b'machrayes nechasim. If it doesn't have a lien in it, then gavim nechasim mineichayin, and then you can collect from only the properties that Shimon has, that the borrower has under his possession. The Chum say that achrayas to a sefer. You can always collect from lien properties. So why didn't it say so in the document? It's because the scribe forgot it. Okay, the Gemara says Tifta the Rabbi Elazar b'chada. It's a single question on Rabbi Elazar. The Gemara is going to say two questions, and then the Gemara say it's really one question. Damar, because Rabbi Elazar said li Rab Meir. Rabbi Elazar explained Rab Meir that shtar she'ein b'achrayas nechasim in agavim nechasim eshabadim v'leim nechasim in echayr. He says that documents that don't have a lien in it, you can't use them for anything. Says they're totally invalid, and that was the reason why we're giving it back, because it's a useless document. We also said that according to Rab Meir and the Rabbanan, which means that if Shimon agrees that he borrowed the money, we said everyone would agree that you can give the document back to Reuben, which would mean that we have no concern that maybe they're trying to get rid of the purchaser. We don't suspect such a dishonesty. Ubraisa and the Braisa says this is why it's a question, because what Rebbe Elazar says is different than the Braisa. Braisa says that you can collect from with the document that doesn't have a lien in it. And it also says that both of them do suspect the Kenunya, which is their trick to get rid of the purchaser. Where does it say that? That even if they both agree, you can't return it, which is exactly the opposite of Rabbi Elazar. We see that we do suspect. The Gemara says, well, honey, you told me that there's only one question on Rabbi Elazar, and now you just told me two questions. You told me one question is shtar she'ein b'achrayas nechasim is valid, and the other question is that if chayav maida, if Shimon agrees that you, according to Rabbi Elazar, you could return it, and according to Rabbi Meir, according to the Braisa, you can't return it. Gemara says, Chadahu. We have told you that it's one question. The reason is because it really is one question. The Chad Tamhu. Because there's one reason for both of these questions. Mishum de Kamar Rabbi Elazar machlekes b'shein chayav maida hu metaratzachi. The reason why we had to say that you can't collect at all from a document that doesn't have a achrayas in it is because Rabbi Elazar says that that the machlekes is kashein chayav maida. It's because Shimon doesn't agree. If Shimon doesn't agree, then and you still give it back, so then how could you give it back? It must be because the document is worthless. But if that's the machlekes, that if the machlekes is between Reb Meir and the Chacham is when Shimon doesn't agree, that would mean automatically that when Shimon does agree, then you do give it back according to how could you give it back? We have a concern of Kenunya, and maybe they made up this whole story that he never paid back just to get rid of just to get rid of the purchaser. So it must be that we're not chayash to Kenunya. So it's because of that one basic opinion that we have these two outcomes, and so it's really just one question on Rabbi Elazar. Give to the Shmuel b'tarti. But there's a question on Shmuel in two ways. Chada, one of them is Rabbi Elazar. Exactly the same question that we had on Rabbi Elazar. Because he learns the Mishnah exactly like Rabbi Elazar did. That what the Mishnah is talking about, where Shimon doesn't agree that he owes the money, and nevertheless we're going to return the document back to, according to Reb Meir, we'll return the document if there's no achrayas in it. So that would be the one question. And v'chada, the other one is the Amar Shmuel Matzah Shtar Hakna B'Shuk Yachsel L'Bailam V'Lei Chashin L'Pirayin. Shmuel has another statement. Shmuel says it's going to be spoken about later, but I think we mentioned this before when we spoke about Sugazant. We spoke about Shtari Hakna. Shtari Hakna meant that Shimon, who's the borrower, accepts on himself the lien without ever borrowing the money. And
Why we do that?
I don't know why he would do that, but he's expecting probably to borrow the money, but it doesn't matter if he borrows it or not, because right now he's saying, look, I'm indebting my my property to you, and now I want you to lend me the money. And the guy says, well, I'll lend you the money when I get it. So Hillel told me that maybe they do this sometimes by construction loans, where there's a lien on the property, even though you haven't borrowed all the money yet. You know, as they need more money,
They put a general lien.
they put there's a general lien on it, and then the loan keeps going up. So Shmuel says, Matzah Shtar Hakna, if there is a document that says that that there's a lien on the property, you return it to the owner. We're not concerned that maybe it was already paid up, because we think that if it was paid up, he would have torn it. Kumar says, Tiyufta, what's the question? The Tani Hacha, because the Brisa says, that even if they both agree that you don't return it. Why don't you return it if Shimon agrees to it? Because we have a concern that maybe it was paid. For sure, if the leiva doesn't agree, the cheshin lepiran. For sure, we're concerned about that. So 1 second. Shmuel holds that you can return it. Yachsel bailam. Shimon says, 1 second, I paid it up. Nevertheless, if you would have paid it up, so why didn't you tear it? Why didn't you have it torn? Yeah, they would by a get, after the get is given, they put a tear in it. That's that shows that it's been used as a special tear.
We spoke about gets also that get ripped in half. Half of it's missing.
That one?
Half of the documents missing. It's just like ripped off.
Oh.
Yeah,
Right.
like they write it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now there is a strange thing going on here, because we're saying in Rebbe Lazar, we said that if Shimon doesn't agree, Shein Chayev Maida, then you could return it to Ruvain because the document is worthless. That's according to Reb Meir. Now here, we're talking about Shimon doesn't agree, and you're returning it to Ruvain, and it's not because it's worthless. Or because here the document itself says that there's a lien in it. Yeah.
And then Yachsel Bailam.
Then Yachsel Bailam. Let's see how he says this here. I thought Shmuel said before that Leichashin and Lepiroin and Leknunia. Story Chayv Shem Bechreis Nechasim. Shmuel dam Leichashin Lepiroin Mayikla Meimar. Shmuel holds that Leichashin Lepiroin and Leknunia. Now here we're saying that Shmuel Leichashin Lepiroin, so it's the same thing. We're not concerned that it was paid up already. Okay. And that's the question on Shmuel, because the Brisa says that we are concerned about that. Okay, Amar Shmuel. We leave it alone. Amar Shmuel, my time in the Rabbanan. We go back to the to the opinion of the sages that say that if there's no achrayas in it, you still can't give it back. What's the reason for the Rabbanan that you can't give it back? Because Sabri, they hold achrayas to seferu. That the fact that it doesn't say achrayas, that means that you can collect from sold property. That's just a mistake of the scribe.
They're saying that every single document will always have achrayas, otherwise.
Yeah, a milva b'shtar. The point of the milva b'shtar is that you should be able to collect. Otherwise, you don't need a document. Amalei Rava Bar Isi, Ravidi Bar Ravin. Rava Bar Isi says to Ravidi Bar Ravin, Miyam Shmuel Hachi. Shmuel really say that achrayas to a sefer, that if it's this lien on the property is missing from the document, we say that it's there anyway, even though it wasn't written clearly. But the problem is, Vamar Shmuel, but Shmuel says, Shvach, Shvar, V'shibad Tzarech Limalech, that every time you write a document, the scribe has to ask the people involved if they're agreeing to the following things. Now, we're talking about a document here where someone is selling a property. He's writing a document of the sale. Now, if someone comes and says that you sold a property, so you bought a property, comes to the purchaser, you bought a property that was really mine. So let's say it's Shimon. So Shimon goes back to Ruvain and tells him, I just lost the property that you sold me because you had stolen the property. It wasn't really yours. I want the money back that I paid for the property. So in the document that when Ruvain sold it to Shimon originally, he has to write certain things in there. One of them is that, okay, I'm putting a lien on my properties that if you lose the property because the title wasn't clear, so then you can come back and collect the other properties from me. You can, okay, that's one point. Another point is that if you've invested money into that property, you can come back to me and take the money, not only the value of the property, but also the investment that you put into it, you can also take any improvements that you did to the property. So shvach would mean that you can collect the improvements of the property. Shvar means that not only can you collect the improvements, but you can even collect, it doesn't have to do with the improvement, you can collect from the best of my property, from the idios. You can take my best properties as a guarantee for this sale. And v'shibud, in that there's a lien on all his properties towards the sale, that he's not going to come back and say that the title wasn't clear. So when he writes those things, Shmuel said that he has to ask the scribe, do you agree to this? Now, one of these things is shibud, that there's a lien on the property. So how come Shmuel says achrayas to a sefer, that even if you don't write it, it's automatic? If it's if it's automatic, excuse me, it's automatic, then why should he have to ask every time? What would happen if he doesn't write it? If he doesn't write it because the guy didn't agree.
What is he saying? That the scribe now is the Bezdin or the Eidim?
That he's saying that the scribe determines what's written in the document, determines the halacha of how the property could be extracted.
But the scribe is not they're not Eidim, it's not two Eidim, it's not a Bezdin, it's not a Kiyum, it's not anything. It's a scribe.
Right. However, what it says in the document, what we're seeing from Shmuel, what it says in the document is very significant. Before we were saying that, well, okay, it didn't say
The
it
scribe, who said that the scribe has to be with both people are there? He could write it for one guy and then the other guy comes and signs it. Since when do we make the scribe such an important part of the whole business transaction?
Yeah, it's not the scribe. We're talking about, we have a document here that's missing a major part. We said, oh, don't worry about it. We said before, achrayas to a sefer. It doesn't matter. There still is a lien on the property. And now we're saying that, no, the scribe, what he writes is going to make a big difference. Because if he doesn't write it, then it doesn't exist. And he actually has to ask, do you want this? Do you want that? But if it's automatic, and even if he doesn't write it, it's automatically there, then why is what's the difference if he asks, if he doesn't ask? It's automatically
I don't
there.
see how this whole process depends on the scribe.
Well, it depends on the document.
Yeah, but you're saying the scribe would have known he wouldn't have done this or he would have done that. Who cares? The scribe could have done anything. He's not a bezdin. He's not an adim. He's not anything. He could have done it without both of them there. He could have done it by himself. Mama Kesha. What does the scribe got to do with this whole story? All right, keep going.
Yeah. No, the idea is that he pulls out a document that's missing words. Do we say that that's significant or not significant? That's the idea. So Shmuel said that the scribe has to write it. And if he doesn't write it, then it's not there. Problem is Shmuel before said that if he doesn't write it, it's just a mistake and it is there, right? So the Gemara says, "Leima, let us say, Manda Marha, Layamarha." The one that said in the name of Shmuel that Achrayas to Sefer is not the one that said that the Achrayas needs to be asked before it's written, right? And if it's left out, then it's not there. And there's just different students of Shmuel that are saying this over. The Gemara says, like, Kasha, no, you don't have to say that. Kambishtar alva, there's a difference between a document of a loan and a document of a sale. Shtar alva, when it's a loan, then we assume that there's a lien on the property, even if it's not written there clearly. Because if someone's lending money, he doesn't want to throw his money away, right? You lend money to a friend, you could lose them both. So he wants to make sure that he's going to get get his money back. So even if it doesn't say that there's a lien on Shimon's property. What is that?
Quoting
If there's a lien on the property, so of course, even if it doesn't say it, there is a lien on the property. But when it comes to a sale, it's very possible that a person will purchase a property, even though there's no guarantee that if someone is going to take it away from him, that he's going to get it back. You know, not everyone buys a warranty on items that they, but if you lend money, you want some sort of guarantee that it's going to come back.
Oh, yeah.
This is like there's a difference in the risk that a person would take and when he purchases something, or the risk that he would take when he lends money. When he lends money, he's not willing to take the same risk. He wants it to be more secure. And when he purchases something, he's willing to take a risk because at least he'll have it. He drives out of the used car shop, you know. Okay, at least it'll get me home, the car. Okay. Right.
So his risk,
right.
We're trying to take minimum.
Right.
But on the other hand, when you price something like at a low price, you might have some reward.
Right. Right. That's a good point. Avu Bari, he bought Alisa. How do they translate Alisa? Is that an attic? A good land. Karka Ma'ula. But a good land from his sister. So what happened was, a creditor came, a creditor of his sister came and took it away from Avu Bari. What does it say there? Oh, you have a upper floor?
Wow.
Okay. Over here it says, yeah. What do you have in the corner? Does it say an upper floor or the word could mean both?
What's the word again?
So, Alisa. Or it could mean a karka ma'ula, like
Good piece of
like
property
Idias.
or upstairs. What is that?
It's gonna say an upper floor.
Here it says on the corner. No.
A loft. So both of them say an upper floor. They say different. So machlekes here amongst all the different commentaries on the table. What Alisa means. Okay. An upper story. Okay, so he bought an upper story and like a penthouse from his sister. The creditor came and took it away. So he comes to Mar Shmuel. So Shmuel says to him,
When you order from it.
Kasva Lach. Did she write for you a guarantee that you're going to get the money back if it's taken away? Amalei. He said no. She never wrote that. Amalei Ken Zil Shalma. If that's the case, then go in peace. Have a nice day, basically. I hope everything else goes well. Amalei. You have no case, right? So Amalei. So who is this? Avu Bari tells to Shmuel, but you're the one that says that if there's no achrayas in it, it's a mistake, and it's really there. It's just it was left out, but it doesn't matter. Amalei hanimila b'shtari halva. That's only by a loan. B'shtari mekach memkar. But when it comes to a sale, like because it's possible that you were willing to purchase this property even without a guarantee. You say, look, I'll have it for as long as it lasts. It could be that you're willing to take the risk and you'll have the property even just for one day. That would be satisfactory.
Also, in a Malva, the lender's really not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, that's what Hill was pointing this out, that because you can't take interest,
Right.
you really there's no benefits. At least you should get your money back. And when there's a property, so you're automatically getting a benefit because right away you have the property. What are you going to do with it? All of this? Well, you have it for now. Okay, Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Reuven Shemachar Sadal Shimon Ba'achrayas. If Reuven sold the field to Shimon, Shimon is the purchaser, and Reuven guarantees the sale. Then comes along a creditor of Reuven and takes the property from Shimon. Reuven can take the creditor, let's say the creditor is Zavulun, and he can take him to court and say, I paid you, what are you doing, this and that. And Zavulun can't tell him, that you have nothing to do with me because I already took the property. I'm just dealing with your property. Damalei, because Reuven will tell to Zvulun, what are you talking about? When you take the property from Shimon, Shimon comes to me and asks me for the money. So of course I'm involved here. I think he's much more involved, not just because he comes back to him. He's involved because he's the one that borrowed the money, right? But it just have to do with the IDD Hadar. Okay. Ikadarmi there. Some say, Afilu Shalei B'achrayas Nami, even if there was no guarantee on the property, then Reuven can still go to court together with Zvulun, the guy that's the creditor, because he says, I don't want Shimon to have complaints. I still want to be a good person, with a good name. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Reuven Reuven sold the property to Shimon and he did not guarantee it. Yatzola Asikin. And Asikin means contesters. Someone comes up and contests it. So this is a problem, and he realizes that he's getting into a property that's going to be a lot of problems here. So he wants to back out. So it goes like this. So actually, if he didn't make a chazaka in it, right? He's maybe gave the money, but he didn't. Shimon didn't already make a chazak in it. The money was given. Kesef shtar chazaka. But you can buy property with money, right? With the money's given, that should be the whole sale. But yeah, that's another type. That's without the kesef. So Rashi says, we're talking about a case where he didn't give the money yet. Tosfos says, then the whole Gemara would be pointless. So he says, even though he didn't give the money, but there was some other sort of transaction that keeps him in the, that we have to come up with the chiddush, that it depends on the chazaka. That there was some sort of transaction. So actually, if he didn't make a chazak in it, then yachal achzer bay. See what type of chazaka we're dealing with? Doesn't say. A chazaka in the karka. You set up a fence or something. So then the lekiach says, I don't want to get involved in this. There's problems with this field. I want to back out. I see there's already people contesting. But once he makes a chazaka in it, then any yachal achzer bay. He can't back out. He tells him, "Chayse the kitri sabris v'kablas," because you bought a sack that's full of nuts, which basically is that like a surprise prize at the Chinese auction. Is right? You put the money on the one that this is what you got. You got in the cars they call it a lemon. You got a lemon. Cat and bag. Okay. Meimesai have a chazaka. What's considered a chazaka? So it says that, which means that you can't back out. If you someone that's dayash means that you like turn over. A matzri, they say over here, which means the borders. Yeah, you fix something by the borders. The mitzvah. And Ikadamri, there are some that say that afilu b'achrayas, even if there is a guarantee, so Nami also that he can't back out. You see, what's happening here is that no one extracted the property from the purchaser. They just said, "We're going to get you. That's our property. You should know." So the purchaser gets frightened and runs back to Ruvain and says, I don't want to be involved in this deal. I didn't pay the money yet. I want to back out. So Ruvain can tell him, say, look, they didn't do anything to you. They're just talking. You can't back out just because they're threatening or something like that. If they take it away, then come to me and I'll give you back the money. Yeah. Or actually, he didn't give the money yet. Well, we'll stop the deal. If they take it away from you, then we'll stop it. Yitzmar was taught in a statement of Amiraim, a memra. Someone sells the field to his friend, and he didn't take any guarantee. He didn't guarantee the field. And it turns out that this field did not belong to the seller at all. So Rav Amar Yesh Lai Mais. That Rav says that the purchaser goes back to the seller and he gets the money that he paid. But besides for that, Yesh Lai Shvach, he can also take back the improvements that he put into the field that he wants back. Also, he says, "Look, I lost everything. Not only the money, but I put in effort into this." Shmuel says, "Mois Yesh Lai Shvach," like that he can only get the money that he paid back from Reuven. He can't get the extra improvements that he put in. Okay. They asked the question from Rav Huna. This is very interesting because Rav Huna is really a student of Rav. And the question that they ask him is, Pirish Loi es hashvach mahu. Let's say at the time of the sale, when Reuven was guaranteeing the sale, he also says, I guarantee that I'll also take responsibility for any improvements that you put in. So now the question is, Mahu, what's the din? Time of the Shmuel, so according to Rav, he has to pay for it anyway, even if he doesn't say that, right? But according to Shmuel, who said that he doesn't have to pay for the improvements, so is the reason of Shmuel Mishum Delay Pirish Shvacha, because he never specified that he was going to take responsibility. But over here he did specify, so sure he should pay for it. Or it's possible, time of the Shmuel, the Kiman Lesle Karka, since what's happening over here is that this improvement is not involved, is not the property itself. So Mechse Karibis, what basically happened there? Ruvain gets money from Shimon. And 2 months later, Reuven gives money back to Shimon plus an extra, $1,000. So it's ribis. Now, if it's the property itself, so, okay, you got a property, now you return the property, so the money would go back. But once you're adding improvements onto it, so it's mechzik ribis. It's mechzik ribis. It looks like an interest. So this was a question that they're asking to Rav Huna about Shmuel. I see in this, they have a different girsa here, that it's supposed to be Rav Yehuda, which fits a lot better. Because Rav Yehuda was a student of Rav and Shmuel, but Rav Huna was a student of Rav. Yeah. Anyway, Amalahu, so Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda said in Lav. He said yes, no, Rafi Biade, and which basically meant that it was unclear. He went back and forth. Okay, let's leave it over here. Well, should we learn tonight?
Always. Money should not. Money should not. Halala is that. You guys are too much.
We'll leave it by it tomorrow.
Camper can't handle this.
So 8 o'clock,
Whoa.
8:30. I mean,
Or that comes up,
8:30.
guys.
Okay.
Can't go away.